Dominic, how are you? It was great hearing your voice yesterday and making sure that you and the family are well. Welcome to my humble home. And I highly appreciate the fact that you will be participating with me in this small home unilaterally produced concept. So now, my first question, of course, is how are my colleagues at the Singaporean embassy doing? How are my friends doing there? What are the new dynamics? How is the Singaporean community doing in Egypt? Is everybody safe and sound? How has the operation of the embassy integrated into the circumstances and situation that we're in terms of visa policies, in terms of services? So how has your embassy been able to cope with this situation?
Well, good morning, Ashraf. Thank you for suggesting this format and this interview. I think we at the Singapore Embassy, we are doing quite well. We are all working from home in order to minimize contact and to prevent coronavirus from spreading further. As for our citizens, I think what we are doing is we have already evacuated all our students, the majority of our students, and also our tourists back to Singapore just 2 days ago. So we have been quite busy with that kind of work. In terms of a visa and other matters, well, there are no flights in and out of Egypt, and Singapore has also banned foreign visitors for the time being. So there are no visa applications for the time being. So the only work that we have really is just to keep our Singaporeans, those that are remaining here in Egypt, to keep them safe and to maintain contact with them, as well as we have to maintain contact with key contacts in business and government in order to make sure that we keep up to date on developments in the country, as well as with the developing coronavirus crisis. How is work developing? I think it's very difficult at this time because the main task of an embassy is to maintain contact with people, and now that coronavirus has restricted such contact, it becomes very difficult for us to continue with our task, and also because people are now not focused on cooperation and networking. So that part of our work has slowed down considerably. Thank you.
My second question is more of a personal question, and that is to ask about you and the family, and try to understand Your Excellency as not just the ambassador. I refer to it as the CEO of this organization. How have you been working from home? I understand, of course, ambassadors, you have to connect globally all the time. This is maybe not the first circumstances that you have to interact from home, but how is it? What are the dynamics? How are you interacting with your ministry, your government, your community, your family, and what is it like to be working from home?
Well, thank you for your concern. I think we are doing quite well at home. We are trying our best to restrict our movements and not to go out unnecessarily. We have stayed at home for the last 2 to 3 weeks. The only time we go out is if I have to go out to the office to check on things, and also to buy some essential things like food and groceries. But otherwise, most of the time we are staying at home and keeping safe. How about you? How do you keep safe, and what have you been doing the past few weeks?
My third question, and of course we've been tuned into the news, but most of the input that's been coming in, unless you're specifically looking for news from Singapore, is about the United States, it's about China, it's about Italy, it's about Spain, rightfully so, of course. But I'm quite interested, and people are quite interested, especially that Singapore really handled the situation very well from the very beginning. What is happening in Singapore now? What are the dynamics of the coronavirus in Singapore, and how does the Singaporean government foresee the post-corona era. How do you think this is going to change the fabric of society in Singapore within the context?
Yes, Ashraf, indeed. All the news now is about America and Europe, where the coronavirus is spreading tremendously. However, in Singapore, we are not spared also from the effects of coronavirus. However, as you may have seen, Singapore has been praised in the press as well as in WHO for our rapid and intensive response to the coronavirus. So we have put in place a very strict and stringent contact tracing mechanism whereby anyone who has come into contact with a coronavirus contact has to be placed into quarantine. And our contact tracing is very rigorous, and we track, I think, probably a very high percentage of people who have been in contact with the coronavirus. Through this very stringent contact tracing, we have managed to limit the number of people who have been infected. However, of late, we have seen a growing number of coronavirus cases in Singapore. And as a result, the government has now implemented what we call a circuit breaker. So, you know, if you look at the electrical analogy, a circuit breaker cuts power when there's too much electricity coming through. So right now there are maybe a bit many cases of coronavirus happening in Singapore. So we have put in place a circuit breaker whereby people are discouraged from coming out of their homes. People are encouraged to work from home. People are not allowed to gather in groups outside of their own immediate household. Of course, people will still be allowed to come out for essential matters like groceries and 1 hour of exercise every day, but they are encouraged to stay at home as much as possible. And the government has just passed a law to enable the police to enforce these measures. So these measures will be in place for 1 month, and hopefully they will be successful in arresting the growth of the coronavirus. How things will develop further over the next few months? Well, you know, the Singapore Prime Minister has said that we are in this for the long haul, and we will probably have to have such strict measures in place for another 6 months, 12 months, maybe 18 months until a vaccine can be found. And our life will not be able to get back to normal so quickly. But I think there is some hope that some normality of life can return. And that is if you look at Wuhan, where the coronavirus happened, where it started about 2 months ago. They are now, after very strict measures, they are now starting to get back some measure of normality. And hopefully we here in Egypt as well as in Singapore can get back to some measure of normality after a few months of strict measures. So let's hope that we get over this fairly quickly. But we should also be prepared to be in it for the long term. I remember back in 2003, it's about 17 years ago, when SARS hit Singapore, that we had strict measures in place for about 6 months, and then the SARS virus just disappeared, after 6 months. So, I mean, we cannot hope, I think, for a similar outcome for the coronavirus, because it seems that the coronavirus is far more infectious than the SARS virus. So this will probably last a bit more than 6 months. But let's hope that we find a cure, we find a vaccine as soon as possible, and that things can get back to normal again. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for your participation. Best regards to the whole family.